My name's Van Nguyen. I'm Senior Imaging Pro Support Rep for Sony Electronics. And I'm here with my good friend, Patrick Murphy-Racey. Patrick, how have you been?
Awesome. It's
I
great to
love
be
seeing
here.
you all the time. So,
It's great to be back at Prestonwood.
Oh, fantastic.
I shot a wedding here
Thank you
years
to our
ago.
friends here at Prestonwood Church for hosting and allowing us to do this quick kind of overview about alpha products for the faith communities. So first, let's hit it off. We've got a lot of cameras here on the table. Some might not say not enough, but when you look at Sony's lineup, it can be really overwhelming. And I think a lot of folks just want to know, like, what should I be looking at and why, right? And ultimately, it depends on what are your purposes, right? What do you want to do? So what are some of the cameras that you like to use and why?
Well, I shoot a lot of sports, so I use the A1s for that primarily. But I also just bought this little guy, the A7C Mark II, which I love, and I use that. I employ that for video production. I employ it for just photojournalism assignments, portraits, things like that.
Awesome.
And then I also have the FX6, FX9 as well, because I'm kind of a hybrid shooter, so I shoot video and stills kind of seamlessly.
Yeah, so we'll get into that a little bit more a little bit later. But so that Alpha 7C Mark II is a full frame camera, even though it's in a really small body.
And it weighs a pound.
Weighs 1 pound. That's amazing. And we've got it on a gimbal because that's how a lot of folks will probably use it. But yeah, so the Sony lineup, if you look at the model numbers, a camera with a single digit, the Alpha 9, the Alpha 1, the Alpha 7, those are going to be our full frame cameras. If it has more like 4 digits, typically that's going to be like a Super 35 or APS-C type of a camera, which you can make some really great images on as well. Not to knock it, we've got lots of photographers who are using multiple 6000 series cameras in very professional setups as well. And then some of the newer cameras that we have that kind of do, kind of hybrid duty as well. The ZVE series kind of coming in there as well. And when you look at the lineup, there's definitely, some cameras that are better at stills, some that are better at video. I know you had mentioned you do a little bit of hybrid work, some video work, and
that's
stills.
What's cool about the Alpha 1. I can use it, I could shoot 120p 4K with it.
Wow.
And I could shoot 30 frames a second at a football game with it. So it's a really, really great Swiss Army knife for me. And I've got 3 of those because that's, but what I love about the Sony system is how I can mix and match. It's a 1-lens system.
Yeah.
So like this lens here is 11 millimeter 1.8. It's an APS-C lens.
Right.
But because of the size of the megapixel of all these cameras, I can put this on a full frame camera and do vlogging with it.
Yeah.
So it's just, when you have all that real estate on the sensor, it's great.
Yeah. Well, and when you do that, obviously you're putting a lens that's going to cast a smaller image circle onto a bigger sensor. What happens to the camera at that point?
Well, to the user, nothing. Because when you look through the EVF or look at it automatically crops and shows you the correct thing. But in use, it's great because you can still be in 4K and still be capturing because you've got so much real estate in the sensor that you're able to do that.
Yeah, I think in some of the cameras you can stay in 4K. Some cameras, when you crop it, might be HD.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely kind of some cameras that are more stills, some cameras that are more video, and then you kind of have this group of cameras also that kind of in the middle do both really well. So the Alpha 1, we mentioned like the Alpha 7 Mark IV, as well as a great hybrid camera.
This is, I think, the most universally, this camera's awesome because it's got a huge 32 megapixel sensor. It does 10-bit video. And for the price, it's just like such a great deal. So if you're going to send some students down to Belize on a mission trip and you're going to have to get stuck editing all that work, you want it to be 10-bit, right?
Yeah, record everything that you can as best quality that you can.
Right.
And that way you can, kind of package it up and then share it however it needs to be. But it's easier to fix things when you have all of
you need all that color space
data
you can get, man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
6700, similar situation, just with the Super 35 sensor. A great hybrid camera as well. Great autofocusing. I think that's one of the big things is, Sony's come from this, heritage of video products, broadcast and
motion
cinema.
pictures, yeah.
And,
exactly.
When mirrorless kind of created that transition away from having to be totally into stills or totally into video, it really opened up the world to a lot of folks to be able to produce content in a variety of different ways with the same equipment. And you mentioned putting the APS-C lens on a full frame body. We also have one of the most flexible lens mount systems
it's awesome.
out there. So you can adapt lots of third-party lenses out there using a variety of adapters. I don't know what your preference is.
I like the Sigma MC11.
Yeah, so Sigma makes one that can adapt
Metabones is very
Canon
popular.
to Canon lenses over to the Sony body.
Those are really the big two, I think.
Yeah, Metabones and Sigma, right? Mm-hmm. Very nice. So yeah, so let's focus a little bit more on the still production side, because that's very important as well for a lot of folks that are creating brochures. They're creating content to go out there and online ads, social media posts, that type of stuff. What do you use for still production? Or do you prefer?
Probably. Are you talking about still? So if it's moving,
Stills.
I'm going to use A1 every time.
Okay. Yeah.
If it's static or something like a portrait situation, then I'm probably going to drop down to A7C2 or A7CR. I just like the compact nature, how tiny they are. I love that.
Yeah.
But again, I keep putting my hand on this camera here because it is such a fantastic deal, because you get virtually everything you need in one. Like, this camera shoots 10 frames a second. You can go shoot high school football all day long.
Yep.
Even though you're at a big 32 megapixel sensor, it's really good in low light.
Yeah.
So it's just like,
you're talking about the 7 Mark IV.
Yeah.
10 frames per second, 30
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
and that's the other thing I think we should probably point out, is that the cameras have different designations. R kind of stands for resolution. S stands for sensitivity. And that's kind of where it's sort of confusing to look at all of them.
Sure.
But once you start to go, oh, okay, sensitivity, I shoot a lot of low light. I need, our church is dark. Right. I need the A7S3.
Yeah.
I need to be 12 megapixel and just not worry about any of that, because I can, candlelight ceremony, no problem.
Yeah. Especially still photographers, I feel like a lot of them worry about, how much resolution do I have? How much resolution do I need? I need a lot. I need 50 or 60. When it's not necessarily the case, right? The more, because the sensor size stays the same. It's the same shape and size as a 35 millimeter piece of film used to be, right? And when you put more resolution on a camera, you're squeezing more pixels into that same physical space. So those pixels have to get smaller. And unfortunately, that means the ability for them to gather light reduces a little bit as well. So there's some things that we've done with the Alpha 1 and the Alpha 9 Mark II specifically, like the Exmor RS stacked image sensor, which is really efficient at grabbing light. It's 22 times more sensitive at grabbing light than a traditional CMOS type sensor. So you can do things with the Alpha 9 and the Alpha 1 that you couldn't do with some of these other, this Alpha 7 series and the 6700s and the 6000 series, because you're actually pulling the data through. The data is being read out faster, so you have a buffer that's layered onto the back of the sensor. That's why it's called a stacked CMOS sensor. And when we did that, we said, wow, the data's coming off really fast. We don't really need to even use the mechanical shutter most of the time. So those cameras, the 9 and the Alpha 1, they're primarily designed to shoot with the electronic shutter.
Right.
And then we found out there's a lot of folks that like that, because you can be silent.
Yeah.
Be silent.
And on the Alpha 1, it's really crazy. You can actually shoot strobes with the electronic shutter, which is really cool. You can do high-speed sync up to 8,000 of a second. You can do kind of whatever you want. You don't even have to go back. And the other thing that's really cool about the A9 series and the Alpha 1 is that really the only moving parts are the shutter release button and if you're using back button focus. Otherwise, it's all solid state. So when, from a standpoint of how long is this camera really going to last in our kitty, well, if there's no moving parts employed, it's going to last quite a while.
Yeah. I've had folks who traded in their original Alpha 9, and of course, whenever you go to a retailer or somewhere to trade it in, they're gonna count the shutter actuations, and it's surprisingly low.
They only count the mechanical ones.
Because only time you worry about the shutter count on a mechanical shutter, and that means there's less wear and tear. It's kind of similar to like electric cars. You have hours of operation versus how many miles you've driven on a gasoline
Also,
engine.
the batteries just sip. They sip juice. I mean, you go so far. I can get 3,000 pictures easily in using a 600 f4 at a football game. I can shoot 3,000 frames on one battery. Because it's on electronic, it uses so little energy. It's great.
Well, that's the same way that we shoot movies and video, right? You don't use a mechanical shutter anymore.
No.
Back in the old days. Now it's all electronic, so that's really great that we can do that too. Speaking of, let's move over to the video side of things. So the Alpha 7S Mark III is probably the most popular kind of movie alpha camera that we use, or that customers use. And why do you think that is?
The sensor. I mean, for years and years and years, people have been buying cameras based on a list of attributes they have, like features list. That's kind of done now. Really, what you have to look at is what sensor's inside that thing. And this sensor, this 12 megapixel sensor, is just crazy. It is so forgiving. Even if you're not an S-Log, even if you're not shooting in Cinetone S, if you just shoot it just straight out of the camera, it's unbelievable. You can shoot beautiful portraits in low light, almost anywhere.
I think that's the one thing that a lot of folks talk to me the most about whenever they're interested in the 7S III or the FX3 is I've got really challenging lighting situations.
Yep.
I want to be recording video, or I want to be making stills, and it's a dark sanctuary, during a worship service, or we're out at camp, and it's dark, then sunsets. But those are some of the most dynamic images and some of the most moving images that I've seen, of folks worshiping. And again, using the silent shutter, you're not disrupting those moments during a prayer or during a song, and taking people out of their worship, which is really cool.
And music is such a huge part of worship. Yeah. Again, if you've got a string ensemble, you can hear a pin drop when there's a single violin playing, and you can just you can motor away with A7S III, no big deal.
Yeah. So the Alpha 7S Mark III goes up to 409,000 ISO, and it's clean. I've seen maybe a couple of other manufacturers, other cameras that can go that high, but it's super noisy and grainy, and you're never going to max it out. But
the other thing I
would
like to point out about A7S III is that the color doesn't go haywire when you raise that ISO way, way high. Your color stays really stable, and that's so important when you're doing production. Yeah.
Well, and that's, again, it kind of goes back to the Sony's DNA, right? So we make a lot of different types of cameras. We're shooting this segment right now on FX9s and FR7. We make these alpha cameras. We make broadcast cameras. We make our own image sensors.
Yeah.
And so when you mix all of those different products together, it's super easy to get the same look, right, and match them. It's seamless, and it's really important, especially as if you're a new church and you've just been planted and you're growing, you're still trying to flex out what budget you have. So as you add more Sony, you're going to be able to be sure that you can just easily match those together and keep them running, which is really important.
Yeah, and if your church is small, like we're talking about, you're a planted church or whatever, and you're growing, you can invest in the glass and know that your glass isn't going to have to be replaced when you do make the transition to FX9s or whatever in the future, because it's a one lens system. You're not going to have to retool all of a sudden in the middle of growth.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings up the lens lineup, which we've got over 70 native mirrorless lenses that are completely interchangeable between our smallest, Alpha 6000, all the way up to even the Venice. The Venice, a lot of folks are familiar with Venice because of Hollywood productions. A lot of churches out there are using Venice as well, which is awesome. But a lot of folks think, oh, it's a PL mount camera. Well, if you take off the PL mount, it's basically an adapter. There's an E mount underneath there.
Yep.
So these same lenses that a small church could be picking up just easily could be adapted at some point down to onto a Venice.
Correct.
If you're like, you know what, I need that focal length, I need that aperture, I need that smooth zoom, that smooth look, and consistent look across all of the different cameras that we're using. Sony's making it easy.
Yeah, I mentioned before I'm very much a hybrid shooter, and I bid against people. As a freelancer, I'm bidding against 5 and 7 member crews to get an assignment to do a video production, and I'm coming by myself because of the IAF nature of the autofocus, which just nails it, and the dual linear autofocus motors in almost all the new lenses. You get this incredibly organic, beautiful look. I can shoot interviews with a 51.2 wide open and never worry about a thing and trust that that camera is going to just nail everything I need to do, it's good to go. So it just makes it so much easier on me. I can deliver my clients really high quality, but I don't have to hit them with a $50,000 bill to do it. I mean, I can literally come in with a lighting tech or somebody to help me with sound, and do the entire thing with 2 people versus 7.
Yeah, and it's a lot less intimidating
Yes.
as well for the interviewee. You can set up with a small crew, because I know that's one of the challenges that a lot of folks are facing these days is how do we get the right skilled hands in there to help with production, help with multimedia creation. Number one, the Gen Zers and the Gen Alpha, they already know how to do all this stuff. I see young kids setting up their video game streaming or live streams to do makeup and things like that. They know how to use this, and a lot of them are using Sony equipment to do it. So bring them in, get them connected, and help them to flex their technical know-how and do God's work.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that we should talk a little bit more about cinema workflow, right? What does that look like? Do you shoot in log?
I don't. I think Cinetone S for me is great. It's like really all I need. I'm also lighting most everything I'm doing with doing serious production, so I don't really need it that much. I do it when the client asks for it, but I typically just shoot in a Cinetone all the time.
Okay. And a Cinetone is one of those picture profiles, right?
Right.
So PP11, I believe.
PP11, it's my friend.
Yeah, if you're in that world or looking into the world of I want to start to do some color grading, I want to do some more cinematic production, the same picture profiles, what we call in Sony world, are in all of our cameras.
Yes.
So you can just quickly dial to PP1 is for stills. It's kind of set up with the certain gamma profiles and the color space, and you can match all of our cameras across the line if you just dial them all to that same picture profile.
Exactly.
So same thing. So you're talking about S-Cinetone. That's on picture profile number 11, preset 11. Right. But they're presets, but you can always go in and change it for your particular look and your style of who you're communicating with, which is really cool as well. And then you can save that, export it, and then with the new cameras, a lot of the vlogging cameras, I know a lot of folks are kind of getting into vlogging and that vlogging style and that vlogging look. You can actually load those LUTs into the cameras and then have it kind of already baked in there. It's pretty cool.
And it's so much easier when it's already there when you're editing.
Yeah.
Because you're not having to add it in post, and it makes a more streamlined effort.
So log is great, especially if you want to pull out all that dynamic range, and but it does take some skill to kind of go in and recolor. But once you get that LUT kind of set up and dropped on the timeline, then it's pretty seamless. Really changes the dynamics. So we should mention, there's some cameras that we didn't bring in today, the FX30, FX3. Those are part of our cinema line and really well, used cameras as well. I think the FX3, again, I talk about the Alpha 7 S3, but that's the brother or sister, if you will, of the S3 is the FX3. And some of the big differences, of course, with the S3, you have a built-in viewfinder. So if you find yourself in the mission field, if you're out there at youth camp or somewhere
trying
where
to judge your exposure on the side of a glacier at noon,
that has saved me. You put the camera up to your eye just to dial in your exposure, lock it down, and then you can use the screen if you need to just kind of monitor the audio.
It's also great for previewing too. Like you shot a clip and then you go, man, did I get that? And you just hit it and you can look in there and boom, you have it.
That's a good point. Yeah. So it's nice to have the viewfinder. If you don't need it, then obviously FX3 has, instead of that, a handle that plugs into the top. It's included. It has XLR connection. So if you need that XLR connector.
With phantom power, 48 volt
with phantom power.
Yep.
Yeah. I love that we don't just, we're not just concerned about the picture, how the picture looks, but how the audio sounds as well. And we've got some microphones here we'll touch on. But with the FX3, you've got that handle. You can add, there's 2 XLR inputs. You can use it or you can take it off and keep it small, put it on a gimbal, put it into a cage, however you need to use it. But the FX3 also has a fan.
Yes.
So I'm from Austin. I know
it's hot down there.
It was, this summer we had a couple months of solid triple digits every day. And so it gets hot in Texas. It gets hot here in the South. And, those cameras are shooting productions all over the place.
Yeah.
And the fan, active cooling helps tremendously. And, a lot of folks will who aren't familiar with it, they'll say, well, why do I need to step up to, FX3 or and then FX6 and FX9? Why do you charge so much more? Well, you got a lot of different hardware under the hood, and cooling is a big part of it, especially as we venture out into the mission field and you're shooting content out in the wild.
Right, and I would say too, FX3 is like where you're going to use that camera for long form video in addition to doing run and gun and doing local stories about faith community. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's really, and it's also cool. There's so many solutions for audio. I brought just 2 little mics I wanted to show you.
Yeah.
This is the ECM B1. This thing is an amazing. I just did a music festival down in Tennessee about a month ago, and I was shocked. I could actually hear bass in the recordings.
Oh, wow.
Real bass. This is great, and I've got a ECM B10 on this one. So if you're already shooting A7S3s, this is a really cool solution for getting really great audio for run and gun. It really works.
I love these microphones. These, use the multi-interface shoe, which if you look at the shoe or the foot on the microphone, it has all these extra little pins on the bottom, and that makes connections for not just transmitting the audio, but power as well. Because I don't know how many times I've seen folks out in the wild with another manufacturer's microphone. They pop it on there, the red light's on to tell them it's good to go, and mid-interview or mid-shoot, the battery dies, and half the audio's gone, right? So this is powered by the camera. As long as you have the camera powering, and as long as you have enough battery power to run the camera, you're getting audio.
Right. One battery, one lens, one battery.
Yeah, which is pretty awesome. And then there's some neat things on the back of this microphone here. I'm going to take off the windscreen. You can see the capsules on top. This is how we do some of the magic that Sony does with noise cancellation and low cut and things like that.
And this technology came straight from the headphones.
Yeah.
That's where they got that technology
We got
from.
some great. I never travel without my noise canceling headphones, and that's the same type of noise cancellation you're getting in the microphone side. So if you're shooting and it's noisy, because inside the church is great because you can control a lot of the factors, but when you're doing a community service project, when you're at a D now, and all the kids are running around doing service projects and stuff, but you're trying to get that sound bite, it's really nice to have some noise cancellation.
A lot of people don't realize too that this camera can be used on FX 6 and 9 to give 4 channels of audio instead of just 2. So you can, if you've got a mic, say you've got a lav and a shotgun already plugged in, you can actually add this to the top of the camera as a safety. You got a whole nother, and you can run manual control if you want to. Yep. There's just a lot. There's also an adapter called the XLR K3M, and that will go on any of these cameras, and it gives you 2 XLR with phantom power, powered from the camera, and a shotgun mic. Yeah. So even if you made the decision, you went A7S3 instead of FX3, you can still get that pro audio, make it sound like NPR, no problem. Yeah.
So the XLR K3M, that's an adapter that goes on top in the hot shoe, has the 2 XLR inputs, but then also has additional, stereo input as well, right? So certain cameras like the Alpha 7S3, like the FX3, FX30, they have the capability of recording 4 channels of audio into the file. Not all of the Alphas will do that, right? And that's where, again, we have those cameras that are a little bit more video-centric.
FX.
And you can record 4 channels of audio. And I don't know if you brought, is that the G1 on that one?
It is, yep.
Or, I'm thinking of the M1.
ECM G1.
I'm sorry, I'm thinking of the M1.
No, that's not the G1.
Yeah, so we have an ECM M1, which is a smaller version even of, this Sony microphone. And it has the ability to change the sound field so that it has front camera pickup and back camera pickup, but then it embeds the front into the left channel and then the back into the right channel. So if you're interviewing somebody, out, in the mission field and you want to separate the audio because you want to change the levels and adjust and even it out, you could do that.
It's really
pretty amazing.
It's really cool.
So you do that, and then you add that to something like the FX3 or an FX6 even, and you've got another couple channels of audio if you need to record some, natural audio or something else. So pretty awesome. But yeah, a lot of folks are doing vlogging these days. So
huge.
we've got. It seems like we came out just in the last couple of years with a lot of vlogging.
I think there's 4
centric
cameras, 4 specific or 5.
At least a
think
couple
it's
of like
yeah.
cameras that are like the Cybershot style,
Yep.
right? So that's the ZV-1F.
This is the ZV-1F. I ride a motorcycle all the time, and I want to have good quality. You know, I do vlogging on the bike, and this has a 20 millimeter lens. It's super wide.
Fixed lens.
Fixed lens.
Hence the F.
But it lets me zoom with clear image zoom.
Oh, yeah.
So it's really cool. This camera also allows me to shoot vertical video.
Yep.
So if I want to do stories or shorts, I can do that too. And this is a great camera for young people in your church. If you want to empower young people to kind of share the gospel in the way that they want to do it, these vlogging cameras are really, really cool for that.
Yeah. Ultimately, we're all storytellers. I mean, the Bible is a collection of stories from accounts of the folks who lived, at those times. And so that's where, as humans, we're just driven by storytelling. And this is another form, which is very popular right now, especially in the younger generation, of how to tell short stories or sometimes long stories as well, if you're live streaming and that type of thing. So I think it's really important that we learn to communicate. I have 2 young kids. I have a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old at home. And sometimes they say things to me, and I'm like, I don't understand. Are we speaking English together? Because you're using terms I'm not real familiar with. It's one of those things we need to learn. I need to learn those things, the language that they're using to more effectively kind of communicate with them and make that connection stronger as well. And that's really the key. So I think this is a really key piece, and I think the product planning folks at Sony really thought about it as well.
Yeah.
Is this transitioning from a small, inexpensive kind of camera like this into an alpha is super easy too. Once you learn the menu system and kind of how things behave, it's easy to jump into an alpha. So if I know I've got a kid in the youth group that's a vlogger shooting his content on one of these. Throw one of these alphas in their hands and say, hey, help us communicate the stories that we have here. The
other thing too about the vlogging stuff is there are so many models here. So this is a fixed lens, fixed sensor. You can't, but there are interchangeable lens. The ZVE-10 has interchangeable lenses. And then there's the ZVE-1, which is a full frame vlogging camera. And so all these different solutions are there depending on what your exact need is.
Right. We designated them as vlogging cameras because there are certain things about those cameras, the ZVE-1, the ZVE-10, the ZV-1, and the ZV-1F. For instance, sometimes you're going to be doing the archival of, hey, I'm standing at the top of Machu Picchu, let me record this moment for myself or for later. And then there's the folks who are doing live streaming. And, this is, you plug your camera into the computer, turn it on, and you're watching that number go up. You've got 1,000 viewers or whatever to, learn how to put makeup on or whatever. I see folks doing that a lot. These cameras make it extremely easy to do that. You just use a USB cable, USB-C to, USB-A or USB-C. And the camera will pop up a message that says, what do you want me to switch to? Live stream? Are you looking to transfer images off the card? Are you looking to, do something else? Shoot remotely with a tethered situation, studio tethered. And it wasn't always that easy. I remember.
No, that's right. That's right.
Back in 2020, it was really difficult. We had to pivot really fast and figure out how to do that. And I think from then on, Sony learned real quick, okay, this is what folks want to use our cameras for. Let's make it easy.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I love about my job is I get to talk to a lot of folks, journalists, as well as other content creators who provide that feedback. I use the camera this way, and then I think, oh, we haven't thought about that, or that wasn't on our radar. Let's lean into it.
Another thing about the ZV cameras, not to beat it down, but their use is really great if you want to up your game in internal communications within your church.
Yeah.
The webcams in even an Apple product is not very good. It's too wide. It gets really noisy. For very little money, you can employ a ZV camera as your primary vlogging camera, and your zooms all of a sudden will look better than everybody else's, like overnight.
Yeah.
So add a light in there, and now you really got something going.
Yeah.
So that and in ministry, sometimes those desktop preaching, desktop sharing, that can be really powerful for people, especially if they can't get to church.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the pandemic really shifted us into that gear very quickly, and I attended church online whenever the pandemic hit, and we had a chat window on the side, but it's not the same as being in person, right?
It was
having
so
that
strange.
face-to-face connection.
It was so strange preaching to nobody.
Yeah,
that was
to the camera.
bizarre. And it was awful. It was awful.
Yeah, it's tough, but to make that connection, we've got to have that technology to help us bridge that gap. And I think nowadays it's we're post-pandemic, and it's common now. It's like, hey, let me FaceTime with you. Hey, let me Zoom with you. So instead of just saying, sending somebody a text, hey, pray for me this, and then they send the prayer back to you.
Let's pray right now.
It's like, hey, let me turn on my camera and let's connect.
Exactly.
And it has a different impact to it, which is really great. And we see that too. We know like having that face-to-face connection is so important to keep people engaged and keep people feeling like part of the community.
Definitely.
Yeah. So that being said, when you're there in person, sometimes the lighting gets tricky, right? And so we talk about the Alpha 1, the Alpha 9 Mark II a little bit in those challenging light situations. One of the big things that I see right now is a lot of, not just churches, but facilities in general, they're trying to be more energy efficient. And so they're switching out of their lights for LED lights, sometimes not great LED lights.
Yep.
And you're seeing that in the photos, you're seeing that in the videos sometimes, especially as we get away from like projectors and into like these video walls, these LED video walls. Sony makes some really awesome ones, and they don't exhibit some of the scan issues or the kind of banding issues that you would see in some of the lesser expensive ones. But you're seeing a lot of them. And so when you're shooting stills, especially in silent mode with an Alpha 7 series, I caution folks because it said, the 7 series has a slower sensor. It's not going to maybe scan completely before that screen refreshes behind the pastor or the worship leaders. So the Alpha 1, I think, is where we'd love to all be. But I also say, we also have the Alpha 9 series.
Right.
If you don't need 50 megapixels, you need 24. It's going to be plenty of resolution to do some prints, plenty of resolution to post on social. You're going to have that same quick readout of the sensor, and you're going to reduce that chances of having weird banding or an LED board behind you just with a half a refresh.
And I should point out, Alpha 1 is the only camera currently that Sony makes that has a seamless solution for anti-flicker on electronic shutter.
Yeah.
All the other cameras, you have to switch over to mechanical shutter in order to achieve that. But on the Alpha 1, it's masterful. It does it automatically.
When you switch to mechanical shutter, you hear the clunk.
Yep.
Whenever you take the photo. So that can take folks out of that moment, out of their worship, out of the prayer, to kind of say, oh, what's going on over here? Even if it's just momentarily. So, and that being said, we also have super reliable autofocusing in low light while we're doing all of these things with the Alpha 1, Alpha 9 Mark II. That's why I love those cameras as well. You can still do a lot of content creation with the 7 series. You just got to be a little bit more cognizant of, where am I standing? Am I standing next to the video cameras where the microphones are? Am I standing next to folks whenever I'm shooting with the mechanical shutter? Maybe use a longer lens.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, get back there.
Hey, one other thing I wanted to make is about the Alpha series employed in church.
Yep.
Is if you're using these cameras to shoot, most people are pushing out 1080p, so for the wall and for the web and stuff like that. But if you're shooting in 4K, you can, after the fact, harvest still frame grabs, which are going to give you a 8.7 megabyte TIFF file. And if you're shooting a camera like a 7.4 or these others that have 10-bit, you're going to get that in millions of colors. So you can actually really grab still frames very easily off of your video content that you're capturing anyway. But a lot of people are still shooting in 1080p, and that may not be the best thing to do for the future in terms of archiving the history of church and how you're growing and things like that. So that's one of the things that you gotta give a nod to the future about is are we doing 4K? Are we ready for that? Because it's coming.
Yeah. I can agree with you there because I definitely talk with folks who they think, well, I'm only delivering in 1080, so I have no need to shoot in 4K. And that's a very kind of in the moment kind of thought, right? Yeah, if you shoot in 4K, you're archiving in 4K, you can still deliver 1080,
right?
But you have so much more flexibility with
in post.
Huge. You know, all that extra data, you know, than shooting just in HD.
Right.
Then you have less ability to reframe or crop.
Right.
You're gonna soften the image if you do that with an HD feed. But with 4K, it stays nice and sharp.
Exactly.
Still. Plus, you have all the color data. You know, it's a wider color data than HD as well. So, well, yeah, I think we've covered pretty much all of it. We do have, you know, I like that you brought some of these kind of on-camera audio solutions. We do have some wireless audio solutions as well, and I absolutely love our UWP-D series.
Oh, yeah, they're great.
They come in a variety of different bundles where you have a single-channel receiver or a two-channel receiver.
You're hearing them right now, actually.
Yeah, the wireless lav with the body pack. You can mix and match the body pack with a stick mic, you know, for your different purposes, right? And they're super reliable. The audio is fantastic. I was just in Miami talking with some folks at a professional conference, and they were like, you know what? I've tried some of these Bluetooth ones or whatever. Whenever other people start to fill into the venue, like if you're there at big church, you know, everybody's got a phone. Yeah. It's all got Bluetooth. All of a sudden, that's going to get, you know, broken. So the range considerably drops down when you're using, you know, kind of the common Bluetooth or you know, 2.4 gigahertz kind of wireless audio transmitters. So Sony has been in the professional audio business for a very long time. Yeah. And we make some amazing audio products. And again, if you get the little adapter, there's a little SMA-PD5 adapter that you can put onto the receiver pack, and you can mount it right to any of these alpha cameras, even the ZV cameras, and
truly,
get wireless,
truly cordless audio.
Yeah, get wireless, you know, microphones for interviews and that type of thing, which makes it much more cinematic and frees you up as well. I know some folks like to use the stick mic. I love using wireless lavs.
Yeah,
I speak with my hands.
Well, people are more natural without something in their hands. So
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so we got a lot of solutions there as well. We covered a lot in a little bit of time.
We did.
And that's not even...
We're just scratching the surface here.
The surface, the tip of the iceberg. We didn't really talk about FR7 and how robotics you know, can change the whole workflow. This has been such a big game changer in video production, especially, you know, now that you're trying to get more folks that are willing or capable of controlling the camera during a service or, you know, during an event. You could set up multiple FR7 cameras. It's a pan tilt, and if you put a servo lens on there, it can zoom also. You can control it from either the control panel or via a browser, right? I've seen a lot of folks use an iPad. I've seen folks use a desktop with an all-in-one touchscreen and pull focus and all sorts of things. It makes it amazing, and it's one operator where you normally wouldn't be able to put a person because you're going to block someone's line of sight. You could squeeze one of these cameras in and control it from the back of the sanctuary.
And you know, if you've never seen a full frame video, like a robotic full frame quality, it is unbelievable. Yeah. It is so gorgeous.
There's so many things to say about that. Yeah. And so much more to say about the rest of this. You know, we're gonna have to book another session.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we appreciate your time, and we hope that you've enjoyed this time, and we will want to thank our friends here at Prestonwood Church for helping us produce this video. We'll see you next time.